Winter on the canals, boats frozen in, a touch of frost on the roofs, smoky chimneys, and dare I say it, maybe even a hint of magic in the air. No, that's way too cringeworthy. I've overdone it there. I would argue that autumn probably has the higher number of beautiful days out of all of the seasons of the boat life calendar, just because of how long it takes the trees to shift through their incredible golden and orange phases of the leaf coverings. However, when you get a really good winter's day with a very thick frost or some very rare snowfall for these parts, it can be an environment unlike anything else. It's just a shame that it happens so rarely. It's probably a good idea to mention now, especially as we're looking at boats literally frozen in at the Trevor Basin, that what I'm describing as these wonderful, beautiful winter's days can, of course, fetch with them certain logistical and practical issues. In this case, a fine example that if your boat's frozen in place and you can't get it shifted, you better hope that you've got a decent amount of supplies on board, or at the very least, maybe the roads have been gritted, or you've got a decent pair of boots to put on while you trudge your way up to the shop for supplies. A little side note about this clip here. When I first posted this clip on a previous winter video with the first hard frost on the holiday boats in the basin, I had failed to mention that these were the empty holiday boats all nestled together for the off season, waiting for the tourists' time to begin again. And so I started to get loads of angry responses about shining lights in them in the small hours. And I was getting some absolute classic stereotypical internet tough guy things like, "Oh, you'd be in that canal, mate, if you were doing that and shouting about YouTube outside my boat in the morning." It's just one of those things that always amuses me, always amazes me. Anybody can get that angry about something, especially when their basic premise to their anger is completely incorrect. But that's life, that's the internet, sadly. Look at that, 25 degrees on the boat and still stacking more stuff on the fire. Yeah, perhaps that wasn't the best use of fuel. Now, when I had my second boat and had a few really good cold winters, it's where my best ever snowy footage of the canal comes from, my final winter on the second boat I had. But it was also the time when I got my first car. So for the first time ever, I could load the boot of the car up with, as you might have been able to tell there if you're in the UK, not the best quality of fuel, but as an emergency supply, it was very handy. And it meant that whereas previously I'd had to drag my granddad or other family members out in their cars to these obscure canal locations, I was able for once to not be a burden to my family and the people around me and actually almost look after myself like an actual adult. But you can see there's something absolutely tremendously beautiful, stereotypical, romantic, all of those sort of words about a fireplace on a canal just pumping out that heat. And there's something I used to love on that second boat as well, that I would be able to see the flames from the fire reflecting and shining on the wall of the bedroom at the foot of the bed. And it just made me feel so warm and cozy and somehow so safe, if I'm honest. Oh, beautiful stuff. Yeah, winter on a boat, it's brilliant. Flipping heck, I might go out there and see if I can rent one of the holiday boats for 7 months. Why did I say 7? That's not how long winter is, I hope. As you may be able to tell, I am also a huge fan of a good old fashioned foggy day. And when you get the magical combination of a really cold winter's day with a nice white layer of frost on the world and that slightly mystical effect of the mist that blurs the definition between where the ground ends and the sky begins. Again, cringeworthy, overly poetic term there, but it's too late now. I'm 4 minutes into this video, I'm committed. I'm going to try and rescue this narrative now by saying something at least moderately insightful, and that is that we've just seen how busy the Trevor Basin looks and how full it looks in the winter months, because of course all of the holiday boats are there, and that should tell you two things. Firstly, just how many boats there are out and about on the canal during the peak holiday times, because of course it's not just one boat company operating from one marina. There's many just in this region and just in this sort of top end 20 miles of canal here on the Llangollen. But also, because they're all in the basin for the winter time, it should give you an indication as to just how quiet the canals become just with the lack of holiday traffic during this time of year. And then, of course, you've got the fact that a lot of people just simply don't want to take their private boats out during these months. And who can blame them, especially if you've got a risk of getting frozen in overnight somewhere. But that's what makes the winter time such a different experience to what a lot of people's summertime experience of the canals are. And this is something I've spoken about in multiple videos, and I won't labour the point here, but very often when new people come to boat life, they have all the anticipation and expectation of what it's going to be like and how the lifestyle works. And of course, the thoughts and the popular view of, oh, I bet it's cold in the winter and all that sort of stuff. Very often it will turn out that heating the boat isn't that big of a problem. In fact, I'd go as far as to say it's not really a problem at all, but it's the actual desolation of the canals. The winter time can feel like you are the last person on earth, and it can seem like the quietest, loneliest, most barren landscape. And when you consider that it's also, of course, during the winter months that they will often close sections of canal to do maintenance work on them, you can find yourself on a section of canal that's literally got no traffic at all moving on it. And it's something that, although I personally love it, and getting away from the world and pretending I'm the only person that exists is something I've often loved to do and gone out of my way to have that experience, I can quite understand that for a lot of people it can feel crushingly, I don't know, isolating, I suppose. And if you have really bad weather that's wet and rainy for a prolonged period, which has happened to me on multiple winters, it's been some of the worst weather and made boat life absolutely miserable because every time I've left the boat, I've got muddy on the towpaths, I've got soaked trying to get to and from work, and then I've dragged my wet kit indoors and dried it out over the fireplace and steamed the boat up. And you can imagine if you're having that sort of an experience in your day to day practical life and also prone to feelings of loneliness, let's say, you're going to start to feel pretty miserable and pretty isolated out on your little boat in the middle of nowhere. And this is just one of the reasons why people like to go in and out of marinas, maybe not full time into a marina, but just have a couple of months here or there. I often did it the exact opposite way, where I would go into the marina to get out of the busy canal times in the summer and then come out in the worst possible weather conditions, and probably leave people scratching their heads saying, why is he so antisocial? Anyway, thank you very much for joining me for a little look at boat life in the cooler times. Please do check the links in the description. You'll find my boat life books, as well as links to me posting stuff from the canals and the great outdoors all over the internet. Until the next time, keep it boat worthy, keep it interesting, have a fantastic day, and of course, farewell.